Welcome to the Explainer. Whenever we talk about organizational leadership, financial oversight usually gets a bad rap as the most boring, tedious part of the job. But we're going to flip that assumption totally on its head today. We're looking at the board's fiduciary duties not as some dry compliance checklist, but as a genuinely engaging story about worshipful stewardship. So if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by giant spreadsheets or your board responsibilities, this explainer is going to shift your perspective big time. All right, let's just dive right in. To ground all of this, we're looking at the actual governance framework of a real-world group, Restoring Hope Ministries, and just look at how they frame their context. For an organization that's dealing with counseling, education, and caring for vulnerable people, financial policy isn't just a back-office chore. No way. It's actually a high-stakes mission defender. The way an organization handles its money literally dictates how well it can protect the people it's serving. And you can see this commitment right in their governance manual. It says financial oversight protects donors, clients, students, churches, staff, and the public witness. I really want you to think of internal controls and financial policies as a protective shield. When your board is reviewing a budget or double-checking a receipt, they aren't just micromanaging. They're actually holding up a shield that guards the ministry's integrity and all the vulnerable people relying on them. Here's our roadmap for the Explainer today. We've got 5 main chapters to cover. 1. Mindset of worshipful stewardship. 2. Roles and financial oversight. 3. Guardrails and internal controls. 4. Tracking restricted donor funds. And 5. The annual finance rhythm. Starting off with Section 1, Mindset of worshipful stewardship. We really need to shift our perspective right off the bat here. The biggest hurdle for non-finance board members is often feeling like asking questions about money is somehow unspiritual or maybe too corporate. But their policy explicitly states, financial review is normal, worshipful stewardship, not suspicious oversight. The takeaway here? Asking a question like, can we afford this, is not a lack of faith. Actually, it's a deeply spiritual question. It's exactly how the board exercises its duty of care. Governing well means looking at risks and finances as a totally normal, healthy rhythm to protect the mission for the long haul. Moving right along to Section 2, Roles and Financial Oversight. Okay, so a healthy mindset is great, but who exactly does what? Well, let's clarify the treasurer's role, because honestly, it's often the most misunderstood seat at the table. Basically, they're a financial translator. They lead reviews and bring clarity to everyone else. But what are they not? They are not a lone accountant working in a silo. They must never conceal deficits or operate in isolation, and they absolutely should not be the only person with access to the books. The whole point of their job is to empower the entire board to govern faithfully together. Next up, Section 3. Guardrails and internal controls. If the treasurer is the guide, then internal controls are the practical tools the board uses to eliminate blind spots. And these reports? They're basically your dashboard for maintaining absolute visibility. Every single board member needs to get a handle on these 3 essentials. First up, the statement of activity, or the P&L. This simply shows the revenue coming in and the expenses going out. Next is the balance sheet, which shows the overall health, cash in the bank, liabilities, and restricted funds. And finally, the budget versus actual. This tells the board if the ministry is actually sticking to the approved plan. You definitely don't have to be a CPA, but you absolutely have to know how to read the dashboard. Now here is a number every single board needs to burn into their memory. 2. Literally just the number 2. There must always be at least 2 authorized officers with bank access. You simply cannot have one single person with unchecked, isolated access to the funds. Having a strict separation of duties is the most fundamental guardrail any organization can put in place. It prevents fraud, sure, but it also just prevents simple human error. Beyond the rule of 2, here are your non-negotiable guardrails. Think of these as your bare minimum requirements. You need board-approved spending thresholds, so nobody gets surprised by major purchases. You've got to have receipts for reimbursements, and those must be approved by someone other than the person getting paid. Credit cards need strict limits and absolutely 0 personal use. System access for things like QuickBooks must be role-based. And if the organization is paying a related party, like maybe a board member's business, that requires a formal conflict disclosure and recusal. These controls are just as much about protecting staff from false accusations as they are about protecting the bank account. All right, Section 4, Tracking Restricted Donor Funds. This right here is the core focus of our explainer today. If general budgeting is your daily operational work, tracking restricted funds is a sacred trust. It is the ultimate test of an organization's integrity. So let's define this clearly. Donor-restricted funds are gifts that must be used exactly according to specific donor restrictions. This is very different from board-designated funds, which the board can change if they want to. Think of restricted funds like a locked box, or honestly, like a severe dietary allergy. You just do not mix them. If a donor gives money specifically for a counseling scholarship or a new building fund, only the donor holds the key to how that specific money gets spent. So, inevitably, this incredibly tempting question is going to pop up, especially when ministry cash flow gets tight. You've got money sitting right there in the bank in a restricted fund, but you desperately need to pay the electric bill or make payroll today, and someone on the board asks, "Hey, can we just borrow this money or use it for something else temporarily?" And the answer to that is a firm, absolute no way. Strict donor intent means the board cannot use restricted money to pay unrelated bills. Reallocating a restricted scholarship or a designated grant to just cover general operations, that breaks trust with your donors. And it's not just some accounting faux pas, it's literally a violation of the law. This is exactly why that Treasurer's restricted fund report from our earlier dashboard is so absolutely critical. The board has to know at all times exactly what funds are in that locked box. Which brings us to our final chapter, Section 5, the annual finance rhythm. A board simply cannot govern effectively if they're just waiting for an emergency to look at the finances. You have to plot these responsibilities on a predictable timeline. Just look at how this is structured quarter by quarter. In Q1, the board focuses on stewardship, reviewing the prior year closeout and the year-end statements. By Q2, they're checking the mid-year trajectory and reviewing those super important restricted funds. In Q3, they aren't waiting until the last minute. They are already looking at next year's budget assumptions and staffing scenarios. And then finally, in Q4, they formally approve the budget and confirm banking access. See, it's a continuous, proactive cycle. Well, we've covered a ton of ground today, going all the way from the mindset of worshipful stewardship down to the rigid, absolute protection of donor intent. So I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought to take back to your own organization. Are your board's financial controls strong enough to protect your mission and its most vulnerable people? True stewardship isn't just about balancing the books, It's about making sure your mission can thrive safely for years and years to come. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.